The Elsecar Newcomen beam engine. Today is Sunday the 15th of October and I am in a place called Elsecar. I've visited here before looking at this same engine. Now, obviously, I wouldn't normally revisit a place, however, today is a bit special. Today they are doing one of their first Twilight runs, so they're going to be running the engine in the dark. I booked a ticket for the event along with my dad, and it turns out, probably due to the rugby match, we were the only ones on the tour, so that worked out pretty well. Now, let me just get this next bit out of the way. Here's a bit of an excited me with the engine. Well, this is the Newcomen engine at Elsecar. It works on hydraulics and we're going to see it run later today. Very nice engine. Okay, that I promise that is the last bit of sort of selfie footage you're going to see of me today. I won't torture you like that. So let's start the tour. This is, believe it or not, the old boiler house. The boilers have now gone, but there used to be two boilers there. And below is what I call the fire pit, where they would have stoked the boilers with coal. These boilers weren't particularly efficient, only operating at a few psi. But as this is a Newcomen engine, as long as you have pressure and you can condense it into a vacuum, it will work. Carrying on with the tour, this is the pit where the pump goes into. You can see it has started to flood. Obviously, back in the day, it wouldn't have been this flooded. And now, as you can see, the engine is in motion. Only by hydraulics, though. The engine no longer runs on steam and hasn't run on steam since the 1950s. But how did a Newcomen engine work? Well, I'll try and do my best to explain. As you may know, when water gets hot, it turns into steam, and steam creates pressure, and this pressure steam is fed into the main cylinder, which you can see on the photograph here. A Newcomen engine, unlike the beam engine at the Cottage pumping station where I work at in Darlington, North East England, it is a single acting beam engine. This means the piston only does one stroke, one power stroke that is. The rest of the engine is just free moving. The starting position of a Newcomen engine is with the outer end of the beam facing down and the piston at the top of the cylinder. So once the fire is lit and the water gets up to temperature, you can let the steam into the cylinder. With the piston being at the top, it means the cylinder gets completely full of steam. Now, in order to get the engine to work, you need to inject a jet of cold water into the cylinder. When cold water meets steam, it condenses the steam back to water. Now, where the steam once was, this creates a vacuum, and the vacuum pulls the piston back down to the bottom of the cylinder. When it gets back to the bottom, the water is cut off, the steam is let back in, and as the weight on the pump brings the piston back to the top, the cylinder fills with steam again, and then the cycle repeats again. Back to the Elsecar engine. This engine was built in 1795. That makes it one of the oldest beam engines still around, and it also makes it the only Newcomen engine still in its original location. However, if you know Newcomen engines, you'll know this one looks a bit different. Most Newcomen engines are mainly wooden parts, aside from things like the boiler and the cylinder, because I don't really think that would work out in their favour. But usually things like the beam and a lot of the rods will be wooden, whereas you can see this engine is completely cast iron. That is because this is a very heavily modified engine. This engine was initially modified in 1836. The 1836 upgrade got the engine a new piston and a new beam. These were built in the Milton Iron Works. Now, on this channel, we have also seen another engine built at the Milton Iron Works, and this was the non-rotary beam engine at the Leawood pump house on the Cromford Canal. I'll put a few videos of the engine up here now, so you can have a quick look at the engine. The new piston and cylinder has a bore of 48 inches. Now, if you don't know what an engine bore is, I'll put the dictionary definition of it up now. You can also calculate the displacement of the piston through the bore, and I tried to do it there on screen. I hope that's right. I'd like to quickly mention as well that as the video goes on, the camera quality may degrade. That is because the lighting was disappearing, quite frankly, because obviously this had been a Twilight run. As the engine was running, it was getting darker and darker. So that is why the quality goes down a bit. So back in the 1790s, the 4th Earl Fitzwilliam, who lived in a hole not far from the colliery site, decided to build a colliery, and he built the Elsecar Newcomen. Now, one problem is with mines, The further you go down, the more water there is, so you need to have a pump. And you can see the pump on screen now, the Newcomen engine. He purchased this engine brand new for £167 back in the 1790s, which may not seem like a lot, but I'll put the modern equivalent of it up now. As you can see, there's a fair bit difference. As mentioned before, this engine was formally retired in 1923, when electric pumps were put in place to replace it. Also, what is worth noting, the engine was put back into action for a bit in the 1930s when the electric pumps failed. Also, it was occasionally run on demonstrations to show it off. In the 1950s, it did run. However, it had a bit of an accident. The engine overstroked. That is why, if you look on the main stroke resistors on either side of the beam, they are bent and there's a bit missing off the pump end of the beam, which is one of the reasons why they don't run on steam anymore, sadly. In the 1920s, Henry Ford, who was obviously the car manufacturer from America, was out in England looking for engines for his new museum. He wanted to create a museum about inventions and engineering. Obviously, that museum did happen and it is still open to this day. I've never been, but it's on the list of places to go. Anyway, he came across the Newcomen engine at Elsecar, and he offered a blank cheque to the owner of the engine to buy it. With that blank cheque, he said, "Name your price and I shall buy your engine." Thankfully for us, the offer was put down, and now the engine is thankfully still here for all to see in the 21st century. Between the engine's final run in the 1950s and the start of the 2010s, the engine was derelict. It was completely abandoned and decaying. The engine really looked a bit sorry for itself. In 2012, the museum managed to secure some funding for the engine's restoration. So from 2012 to 2014, the engine had a £500,000 major overhaul and restoration. At the conclusion of this restoration in November 2014, the engine was put back into motion using a hydraulic ram on the valve rod. I want to thank Gemma and Lyndon from the Elsecar Heritage Centre for my tour of the Newcomen engine. I really do recommend that you come and see it. It's amazing and it is such a good day out for the family. The engine has now stopped running for 2023, but it will be back in operation at the start of the season in 2024, and I recommend that you contact the Elsecar Heritage Museum to find out when the 2024 running dates are. Now I'll shut up and I'll let you watch some videos of the engine running in daylight so you can maybe see it a bit better. And I'll also keep the sound on so you can hear how silent the engine is now, given the fact it runs on electrics. I'm also going to put a few clips of the Leawood pump house engine on at the end so you can hear what that engine sounds like under steam. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it interesting.